Hi everybody, my name is Kary, and today I'm going to be presenting about how to use technology tools to make remote teaching more interactive. So just a little bit about me to start. I'm the founder of the new EdTech Classroom, which is a YouTube channel and a blog about integrating technology. And I'm also a classroom teacher. I've been teaching for over a decade now. And I'm a Google for Education certified trainer, as well as a National Geographic educator. And I'm just really passionate about helping teachers learn how they can use technology in creative ways and really use it to enhance learning, which is obviously really important right now, especially with all the uncertainty about whether or not we're going to be teaching remotely or doing some kind of blended learning this fall. So our objective today is that we're going to be learning some different tech tools for creating interactive remote lessons. And just to be clear, I actually use all these tools during in-person teaching as well. So they're great tools to have for remote teaching, but they're also great tools to have for in-class teaching as well. So I highly recommend that you take these back to your regular classrooms after you learn all these tools. So the tools that I'm going to show today can be applied in both synchronous and asynchronous learning situations. So if you're on a live video call with your students and you need some tools to get students to engage more, the tools that I'm going to show you today can definitely help you do that. And similarly, if students are doing asynchronous learning and you need them to engage with the content that you are showing them, these tools will also work for that as well. So the tools that we're going to look at today are really a vital component of remote teaching or blended learning. And like I said, I also think a really vital component of in-class teaching as well, because they're all tools that can help our students engage with content more actively. They're tools that can also really help us get 100% participation. So tools that are far more superior to asking students to engage by doing things like raising their hands, for example. And really importantly as well, with all forms of learning, but in particular remote teaching, that all these tools can also be used as formative assessment tools for both teachers and students. So they'll give teachers information about what students understand about a topic, and they'll also give students an understanding of what they understand as well. So it's helpful for getting that really useful information about how effective our teaching has been to basically function as a check for understanding. And then another piece of remote teaching that is obviously really challenging is just the fact that students are at home, not with their classmates. So some of these tools allow students to collaborate with each other, to communicate with each other, to see each other's responses, respond to each other in real time, things like that. So they can also help facilitate that feeling of being in a class community. So just some tips about how to use these interactivity tools. I would recommend that you use them throughout lessons. So it's not just something that you do, an intro activity or an exit ticket. You are kind of weaving these interactivity tools throughout your lesson. I also recommend that you use a wide variety of tools and strategies. So you don't just want to stick with one and repeat that one over and over. As we know, students get bored pretty quickly. So I'd recommend mixing it up and mixing it up often. And then my last recommendation is that you also participate as well. So the more you can participate in commenting on students' responses or posting responses yourself, the more it's going to feel like you're engaged with the class and you're also part of that class community. Okay, so let's dig in and start to look at some of these tools. So I've selected tools that I actually use with my students, and I've also selected tools here that at least have enough free features that I don't think it's necessary to pay for the premium version. And I'm also not really going to be showing in this video how to use these tools so much. And the reason why is because I've included tutorials that I have for my YouTube channel about how to actually get set up with these tools, all the different features of those tools. So rather than spend time on that, instead, I want to show you how these tools could be combined for different activities and what it might actually look like to use them with your students. So the first tool that we're going to look at is Google Jamboard. Google Jamboard is an app version of a physical smartboard. And the app version is essentially an interactive whiteboard where you could do live teaching, and students can also jump on and add to the board and collaborate on the board as well. And the next tool is Padlet. Padlet, I know, is kind of an old school tech tool. It's also consistently been one of my favorite tools. It's also an online bulletin board. It's quite different from Jamboard in that it essentially allows students to post basically any type of media that you could imagine. So it's just a great tool for collaborating, getting students to communicate with each other and share work that they've created, for example. And then the next tool that I'm going to show you is PearDeck. PearDeck is a Google Slides, or now available for PowerPoint as well, add-on that will essentially add different interactivity elements to your presentations. So these can be used in asynchronous or synchronous learning. And they're just a great way to do these little mini checks for understandings if you present your lessons with Google Slides or PowerPoint. And then the next tool is a really powerful tool called Nearpod. Nearpod is a student engagement platform. Nearpod has tons of pre-made lessons on it. They're really content rich. They have different interactivity tools that are pretty dynamic. And they also have loads of integrations with other programs. And they have an add-on for Google Slides, just like PearDeck, that is free and has loads of great interactivity features that you can add to your lessons, similar to PearDeck. The next is a really popular program that I'm sure a lot of people out there have already used, called Kahoot, which essentially gamifies learning. It's great for formative assessment. So if you're reviewing what students have learned, they can either work together or individually to play this quiz game in order to see what they know. And Kahoot can also be done either synchronously or asynchronously. I also want to show Flipgrid. Flipgrid is also a pretty popular tool, but it's just, I think, actually really great for remote teaching in particular. It's kind of funny because logistically, Flipgrid can be a little bit challenging to implement in the classroom because it requires students to all be videotaping themselves through their computer cameras. And that's kind of a logistical nightmare. But it's really perfect in some ways for remote teaching because they can be in their own room, capturing these short video responses to assignments that you post, and then they get to respond to each other via video. So it's a really cool program for that reason. And then also going to show you Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle, I'd say, probably leans more toward being a tool that's a little bit more helpful for asynchronous learning. And it's not that it couldn't be used for synchronous learning, but what Edpuzzle does is essentially allow a teacher to upload a video from YouTube and add custom questions to that video that students have to answer in order to proceed through the video. So it's a way for students to interact with video content. And there really aren't a lot of other tools out there like that. So I definitely recommend that you make Edpuzzle a part of your tech tools suite for remote teaching. All right, so let's look at some of these tools in action. I'm going to show you some different ways that you can sequence putting some of these tools together to build toward an objective, and also just give you an idea of what some of these programs would actually look like. So the first example is going to take Padlet and combine it with Edpuzzle. And for this lesson, I'm having students identify over the course of a week the important achievements in engineering of the ancient Romans. So what they're going to do to start the week is go to Padlet, and on Padlet, they are going to be posting something that they already know about the engineering achievements of Rome. So here you can see just some examples as though a student had already posted, so they can see their peers' responses. And then when they're ready to post, they hit that plus button. They can add a post themselves about what they know. And then if they also want to add some media like these other students did, then they can add an image from Google or from other places as well. So for example, I might say here that I know that they built roads. And then that post will show up. Students can comment on each other's posts as well. So like I mentioned, Padlet is just really dynamic. It's an awesome tool for interactivity. It's also quick and easy. It doesn't take a lot of time to set up, and students really like using it. Okay, so after students have gone to Padlet, I'm going to send them to Edpuzzle, where they're going to watch an interactive video and they're going to learn a little bit more about the achievements of ancient Rome. So you'll notice on this video that there's a little caret underneath, and that caret represents a question that I set up for creating this assignment. So when students are watching this video, when they arrive at that caret, it's going to pop up a question and it will ask them a comprehension question that they have to answer in order to proceed through the video. So here you can see the question is, which Roman achievement helped bring water to cities? So if I click the correct answer, aqueducts, and submit it, it will tell students all right in that moment whether or not they got the answers correct. And if you set up classes with Edpuzzle, you can see how all of your students answered all of these questions as well. So it's a great way for you to get some information about what your students are understanding or not understanding. Okay, so after students have watched that video to learn about the achievements of Rome, they can go back to the Padlet, and then there I'm just going to have them record one new thing they learned. And they could do that in the comment, or they could also just add another post. So just coming back around after they've learned something to interact and engage with each other and have a little online collaborative conversation. And this would be a great place to encourage students to comment on each other's posts as well, so that they're making sure that they're engaging not just with the material, but with each other as well. Okay, so the next example is essentially the next lesson that would happen in sequence with that previous lesson. And this is going to show you how you might sequence a tool like Jamboard and Flipgrid. So for this lesson, for the next day when I'm having students dig in a little bit more and do some more learning about this topic, I could send them to an article where they would read to learn about some of the engineering achievements of the ancient Romans. And then what students are going to do is open Jamboard. And when they open Jamboard, I'm going to have them add their name to a new page, and then add an image as well as some text that explains what they learned about one of those achievements. So when they get into the Jamboard, what they'll see here is either a teacher example or something that another student already did. And then they can also go in and review their peers' responses and then start to add their own. So to add their own response, they can add a sticky note with their name if they want at the top. And then if they want to add, or they need to add an image, so they're going to go down to image, add an image that they're going to find from Google. So for example, here I might say my example of roads again, and then these can be dragged around, resized, things like that, kind of however the student wants. They can add another sticky note to explain what this is, a complex system of roads. And then also change the color and drag that around. And then you can have them add an explanation about what they learned. So you can see that Google Jamboard is a great tool for having students jump in, post responses. Obviously looks a little bit different, has some different functionality from Padlet. It can be a great teaching tool as well. So if this were my teacher slide and I wanted to be pointing things out and teaching things, there's this little laser pointer that I can use as well. And there's other things that you can do with Google Jamboard. Like all the other tools that I'm going to show, I have a full tutorial about how to use Google Jamboard that I definitely recommend you check it out if you feel like you want to use it. I will say one big downside of Google Jamboard is that students can essentially edit over each other's responses if you give them editing access. So there's no way to give them like restricted editing access. So for example, a kid could go in and erase somebody else's work. So you're either going to have a conversation about digital citizenship if you're using Google Jamboard, or make sure they're staying on individual pages, or not care that much if they're kind of interacting in, ways like that on each other's boards, because it's not, maybe you're not making it like super high stakes. Or you could essentially have these Jamboards set up. You could actually push them out through Google Classroom and have them be more like interactive notebooks that you're using just to have communication with your students, to give them feedback about work that they're doing, for example. Okay, so after they have posted in the Jamboard, what I'm going to have them do next is review each other's responses. So see what their classmates posted to the Jamboard to do a little bit of peer-to-peer learning here. And then students are going to log into Flipgrid, and they're going to create a 1-minute video explaining what they believe at this point to be the most important achievements. So they'll now get into Flipgrid and start to record a short response. So here, students will log in. They'll see, again, the instructions for this assignment. They'll see down below any of their peers who have already responded to the question. They can click on those videos. They can watch them. They can also respond to their peers via video. So if you click on that, it's going to prompt the student to log in. And then once they log in, they'll be able to record their video. And then to actually just record a response to the prompt, they just need to go to this green arrow, and that will allow them to record their response. Okay, so now that we've looked at some different tools that you might kind of app smash together and put in sequence to build these interactive remote lessons, I want to show you a few other tools. The first is PearDeck. And like I explained, PearDeck basically allows you to add interactivity elements to your Google Slides. So the way that it works, you do have to set up an account. You can go to Get Add-ons. You'll get a PearDeck add-on from the G Suite Marketplace. It's right at the top. You'll see it's already installed for me. And then all you need to do is select it, select Open, and that's going to pop up a menu bar that's going to give you some different options for the different types of interactivity tools that you can add to your slides. So let's say, for example, here, if you look at this second slide, that I have a question that I want to ask my class. So this is a question that I might want people to respond to in text. What I can do here is add a text response, and that will add this little interactivity element to the bottom of my slide. Now you'll see here that it's also going to ask me later when I start the lesson whether or not I want this to be done synchronously or asynchronously. So you could have your students answer that question live altogether or on their own if they're doing remote learning and they're doing some independent study. There are other types of questions that you can add. So this one, for example, says, what percentage of students would you like to be engaged? I've already added this number question. You can tell that I've added the question because it has that little PearDeck bar at the bottom. And then it does other things. So for example, you can push out automatically websites to students. So if you wanted students to say, read an article about why engagement is important, you could add that website on there. So you would just copy and paste the URL for the website. You see, I already put it on there, and then that's going to pop up down below. Okay, so let's look at what this actually looks like if I were to run this as a lesson. I go up here to start lesson. It's going to ask me again whether or not I want this to be student paced or instructor paced. Then it's going to ask me to sign in. This, what you're seeing right now, is a fully free account. Okay, so now that I have the student screen pulled up on one side and the teacher screen on the other, you can see that on the student slide, it's asking students to enter a code. And once they enter that code, it's going to take them into the presentation. They just need to sign in. They don't need to actually have PearDeck accounts. They just need to sign in. And once they're signed in, I will see that I have a student who's connected. I can start the class. And then the way that I have it right now, it's essentially fixed because it's the teacher presenting the lesson live. So students can't advance through the slides on their own. When they click on them, you'll see that's basically stuck. I have to advance the slide for them. And then when I advance to the slide and it has that interactivity tool, you'll see it pops up the question that I wrote on both slides. And then the students can click answer question. And then here they would type their response, and they don't have to hit enter or anything. Once they type that response, you can show their responses there. And notice that they come up anonymous. So it's not going to put a student name on it unless you ask them to do that. You can also do things like lock screen. So if you want students to like stop answering the question, you can do that. So just a great tool here for quick checks for understanding, kind of see where students are at. I can honestly say that I pretty much always get pretty close to 100% participation when I use PearDeck. So it's a really great program just for like those quick engagement tools, especially if you just want to add that engagement or that interactivity element to something that you've already made, as opposed to something that's sort of already been pre-created for you. Although there are some pre-created lessons in PearDeck as well. Okay, so that was PearDeck. Now let's take a look at Nearpod, which is similar in some ways, but has a lot of different functionality as well. And I really feel pretty strongly that Nearpod is pretty close to a must-have app. There are a lot of free features for Nearpod that are great. They do have a great paid program as well, if your school is willing to purchase it. So similar to PearDeck, Nearpod has an add-on feature. It also has a whole separate website with its own program as well. But what I'm going to show you here is the add-on. So again, you would go down, you would open up the add-on, and then similar to PearDeck, it's going to pop up that menu bar on the right-hand side. And it's first going to prompt you to sign in with an account. And actually, just like the PearDeck account, this is a totally free Nearpod account that I have here. And then you'll see that there are all these different tools that you can add. And some are actually content tools. So you can see, for example, they have videos you can embed. And then others are these other types of interactivity tools. So you'll see that there's even an integration with Flipgrid here. And actually, there's all kinds of integrations with other programs on Nearpod. So it can be an option if you kind of want it to be more of like a one-shop stop to use a program like Nearpod. But I do want to show you a couple like cool, unique things that Nearpod offers. So one, for example, is this fill in the blank tool. So for the fill in the blank tool, what you can do is essentially you can either type or copy and paste some text with some key important words that you want students to know. So for example, if I stay with ancient Rome here, I could say, in ancient Rome, they discovered many new things about engineering, such as roads and concrete. Okay, not the greatest academic sentence, but it'll do for this demo. Okay, so now what you would do is you would actually select the word, and that's going to pull that word over into the word bank so that students would essentially have to fill those in a fill in the blank. And I will show you what that looks like in just a moment. And then they also have different things on Nearpod, like the field trip tool, which I really love as well. And so if, again, you're doing something like Rome and you want to do like the Roman aqueduct here, search for it and see what comes up. I can put that into the slide, and that's going to add this element where students can actually use virtual reality goggles, or virtual reality headset, I should say, or they can actually look around at a 360-degree image. And then they have open-ended questions similar to PearDeck, also quiz questions as well, polls and things like that. So let's say, for example, you want to ask a quiz question. You could basically compose your question. What is an important Roman achievement? You would write your answers. Concrete, maybe like democracy, something that's not right. And then select your right answer. Okay, so then when you're ready with that question, you can go ahead and click save, and then it's going to add that as well. So similar to PearDeck, you're going to have to send students actually through the Nearpod portal in order to be able to access the program. So you're going to go here, go to save, and go to Nearpod. And that's actually going to take you into the Nearpod website where you'll see other lessons that you've already built in Nearpod. It's going to be saving for you for a little bit. And then once it's loaded, you'll be able to share that lesson with students. Okay, so now that the lesson is loaded, you'll see that I have some options here. The student paced option is right now free, but has not always been free. They made it free during the emergency school closures. I'm not sure how long it's going to continue to be free. So just something to kind of look out for. But again, if you're doing synchronous learning, you want to do a live lesson, you can click on that link, and it's going to give you some different options for how you could share that lesson. So students, for example, could enter a code just like they did with the other lesson. So the way that that would look when they actually get into the lesson is like this. So they would go to Nearpod join and join a session. And then they're going to take this code, LDSON, and they're going to join. So you'll see the first thing that it asks them to do is enter their name. And this name will show up in a report in Nearpod so you can see how students did. So just like PearDeck, since I set this one up to be a teacher-paced lesson, students are not going to be able to advance through the lesson on their own. As the teacher, I will be able to advance the lesson for them. And so when I'm advancing the lesson, they will see the different interactivity tools that I added. And so, for example, here, they could drag that word up there and put it in the correct place, and then click done when they're done. And then on the teacher end, you're going to see their answers. You could actually view their answers live to be able to see how that student did. And you can see the different names of the students as well. And like if you wanted to project this, hide students' names, you could do that. So just a really cool tool for creating interactive lessons. You can see here just another example, that virtual reality that I was talking about, where the student could enter virtual reality to look at it in virtual reality, or they could just like scroll around and look at the aqueduct and then make some observations or something like that after that in the slides. So Nearpod, very powerful, dynamic program that I really, like I already said, think is pretty much a must-have. So definitely check out Nearpod. Okay, and then the last tool I'm going to show you really quickly here is Kahoot. So like I said, Kahoot is a gamified app where you can basically create little review lessons for students. And what they'll have to do to get into that lesson is enter a pin for a class, just like we did with PearDeck and Nearpod. So what you'll do is go into your Kahoot. You'll obviously log in. And again, showing you a free version here. You can create a game in Kahoot by going up here to create, and that'll allow you to build a quiz. It's very straightforward and easy to do. So here I'm just going to show you a quiz that I already have set up. So the way that it looks here, I have my quiz questions. When I click play, I again can decide whether or not I want this to be live or student paced. I'll click the live option here. So then it will generate a code, and then students are going to enter this code in order to play the game. Okay, so you can see here on the split screen that I have my teacher slide on the left and then the student slide on the right, and they can enter the code, click enter, and then enter again a name. And I will see that that student came in. Once I'm ready to start the game, I can click start. So obviously you'd want to wait for all the students to come in. And then when you're playing the game, the way that you can set up the questions is with a timer. So students will have a set period of time to be able to answer this question. What is synchronous learning? Only 10 seconds. They have to affiliate it to one of these different colors. Okay. I click that. Great. So that was a correct answer. And then I can also show here who is like on the podium. So students can compete with each other as they're proceeding through and answering questions. It's just a really highly engaging game, and I think a really cool option for remote teaching, especially if you're doing a live lesson, to make that lesson more interactive, more exciting, and engaging. So I hope you learned some new interactivity tools that you could use for remote teaching or for blended learning or in-person learning for that matter. Each one has different functionality, and I genuinely use all of them with my students. Again, like I said, it's great to mix up tools and have students do different things. I do have a bunch of resources that I want to point you to at the bottom here. So one is just my website. So if you go to my website, I have all kinds of different graphic organizers, explanations on my blog about a lot of these different programs. So if you want to grab some of the free planning documents, things like that I have on there. And then what I have at the bottom here are just a bunch of tutorials from my channel that relate to building these lessons and also how to use these programs. The first two are about how to teach remotely with a Google Slides HyperDoc. So if you're interested in learning really how to sequence a lesson and combine different applications together in order to build toward a learning target, you might want to check those out. I also have free templates for these HyperDocs on my website. And then I have separate tutorials about how to use all the programs like Google Jamboard, Flipgrid, Padlet, PearDeck, Nearpod, Edpuzzle. And this last tutorial shows specifically how to use that Nearpod add-on at the end. The only tutorial I don't have yet for my channel is Kahoot. And then just to plug, if you're interested in learning a little bit more and taking a real deep dive into how to seamlessly integrate technology into your curriculum and really build a flexible classroom space that can adapt to sort of any situation while also engaging students and teaching them relevant 21st century skills amongst all kinds of other cool ways that you can use technology. Join the early bird waitlist for my upcoming course, 21st Century Classroom. It's going to launch in August. I'm really excited about it, and I'd love to see you there. So thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. You can reach me at newedtechclassroom@gmail.com. And I wish you the best of luck with this upcoming school year.